Susan with you through till 6 tonight. Hope you're all right. Still to come on the show this afternoon. Can you thrive in the second half of your life? The answer's yes, and if you don't know how, stick around. We'll find out after 4 o'clock this afternoon. New for 22 is where we look at things that we can watch, do, or in today's case, read this year. Campbell Macpherson is an award-winning author for business and self-help. Hi, Campbell. How are you?
Really well. Lovely to see you. Lovely to listen to you. Lovely to be with you.
Thank you very much. I suppose it's an important question to ask how you are because you're into self-help, aren't you?
I never thought of it that way. I'm fabulous today. I am. Yes, no, I'm going really well.
Or maybe people don't ask you because you're so busy helping them.
You know what? I don't think someone's asked me that for quite a while. So yeah, I help leaders to lead change, I help people to embrace change, and yes, I'm normally the one asking them. So how are you, Susan?
I'm all right, thanks. Yeah, I'm usually all right. As long as I'm not hungry, I'm usually okay. Do you think, what got you into this genre of writing?
Well, what happened is that I was accidentally tapped on the shoulder and asked to go to Abu Dhabi for 3 years to help a big sovereign wealth fund with leading change. And during that 3-year period, I thought, right, after this contract, I'm going to come back and restart my business consultancy. So why don't I just write everything I know about change down and see if I can publish it in a book? So that's where the first book, The Change Catalyst, actually came from. So I then reordered it several million times and sent it off to Wiley and couldn't believe when they published it. So that set me off on the, goodness me, I'm now an author. That then became, I'm now a speaker, and I've been a consultant helping leaders and build cultures that embrace change and lead change for many, many years. But that really kickstarted it, and that was 2017. The first one was published.
The last time somebody tapped me on the shoulder was just to tell me that I got my skirt tucked in my knickers. I mean, that's exciting, going off to Abu Dhabi. That's incredible.
It was. And talk about change, talk about culture change. Goodness me, it was a wonderful experience.
Do you think that more people have turned to self-help books in the lockdowns?
Oh, without a doubt. In fact, I think 2020, that was a plethora of self-help books coming out. But because we all suddenly felt anxious. So even those of us that are not normally anxious, I deal with a lot of financial services companies, and the CEOs were talking to me in private and saying, I didn't realize anxiety was a thing until I actually experienced it myself. And they knew in their heads that people felt anxious, but they never felt it. And in 2020, everyone felt anxious. So we spent time reassessing our lives, reassessing what we need to be doing, what's something meaningful we can be doing, what's the purpose, after we got over the shock of can we afford our life. That was the first quarter of 2020. And I think we all stopped to reflect. So a lot of us wrote books during that period, which actually this book, You Part 2, was written during 2020, during the lockdown.
Was it useful to have all the extra time, or was it something that you'd always planned to do in 2020 anyway? Well,
good question. My business was going gangbusters, and then I signed the contract, or Jane and I signed the contract with Hachette for You Part 2 in the February, and I turned to Jane and said, I don't know where I'm going to find the time to write this. And that was the end of February 2020. Suddenly, I had 4 months, 5 months to be able to write it. So it worked out perfectly.
Many people will have reevaluated what's important to them over the last couple of years. Did you get inspired to write even more during that time, even though you were already working on this project?
I did, and I have several other starter books that I have been that I've written paragraphs and chapters for, because just talking to people about their experiences during the last 2 years, about how they've embraced change, what they've changed in their lives, how they've coped with working from home, with teaching becoming teachers suddenly, having to teach their children from home. There's been more respect for teachers in the last 2 years than I think in almost any profession, from parents going, oh my gosh, this is a really difficult job. So there's been a lot of change. And yes, I've done quite a lot of writing as well. I've done a lot of articles for CEO World and Forbes and a few other things as well.
Yeah, I would say there'll be teachers in cars now listening, cheering you on, but they'll still be in school, Campbell. They'll still be working really hard.
They'll listen on catch up, I'm sure.
The new book is Thriving in the Second Half of Your Life. Do you think a lot of people are written off after the flourishes of youth?
Without a doubt. Ageism is the most common form of prejudice in the Western world that there is. In fact, 1 in every 2 people, according to the World Health Organization, has ageist attitudes. And the Royal Society for Public Health declares it was more common than sexism, gender identity, gender, religion, ethnicity. It is the most common form of discrimination. And we all feel it. In fact, the genesis of You Part 2, which this is the main title of the book, was when I turned 55 a few years ago. And suddenly my inbox was inundated with ads for Viagra and Tenement adult nappies and images of wistful grey hairs and no hairs, gardening or looking out to sea. And I thought, what is the world doing? And suddenly I turned 55 and they're writing me off. And that got me angry. And then I had a chat to Jane and I went, we have to write this book. So that was the genesis. It's so many people in their 50s and their 60s are put onto a square of the board of the game of life that sort of says old and irrelevant. So many are made redundant, and the reason is age, but we don't complain about it because we don't want to talk about it. So yes, that was the big reason. It's not a book about, oh, woe is us, let's go out and march on the streets. It's a very uplifting book about attitude and how to live well for longer, and also how we can afford to live well for longer as well. But that was the genesis. I was angry.
We've got more from Campbell on the way. The Connells 74-75 BBC Radio Stoke. Thriving in the Second Half of Your Life. It's a book written by Campbell Macpherson and his wife Jane, a yoga instructor. I asked Campbell what they had learned from each other.
Well, the biggest thing we learned, which made us laugh, is that we do the same sort of thing. So I help leaders to lead change. I help people, business people, to embrace change and build cultures that embrace change, because that's what leadership and business really and strategy is all about. But Jane does exactly the same thing, but in a far more profound way with her yoga classes, her one-to-one clients, and she's a fully qualified yoga therapist as well. So she helps people with really profound physical and mental issues, and as well as people just simply with bad backs who haven't been exercising for their life. And she helps them through the philosophy of yoga, which is trickles through the book, and also with the postures as well, to help embrace change, accept reality, and look ourselves in the eye and say, what are we going to do about it?
So learning from each other. I mean, the process of lockdown, lots of couples spent extra time together. So you're in this situation when you're living together, working together. Are you like normal couples? Did you have any Barneys about stuff?
Oh, of course we did. But weirdly, the book writing worked really, really well in that Jane was the main proofreader. She wrote several chapters. Of the chapter Menopause versus Menopause, I couldn't have written without her, obviously, and several of the others of radical acceptance and a lot of the bits about Sentosa, which is the yoga philosophy of acceptance that she wrote. But every other one, she would be the first proofreader and say, nope, that's too male, or no, you haven't. Anyway, she was accurate in her criticism. But I tell you, it was more intense than that, because this time last year, we went to Australia and had to quarantine in an airless hotel room for 2 weeks, just the two of us, one room, couldn't open a window, couldn't open a door. And that's when we were editing the book. The fact we survived that and the book survived that is a miracle, really.
That's what a lot of people will be able to relate to. And as you're saying there as well, it's that thing of working together, being constantly together, but also acknowledging that each other brings something different. Did you learn that the experience of aging is very different for men and for women?
It is. There's a lot of similarities, but the profound change of around the menopausal years and beyond is something that then men can try to understand, but we never quite do. It is different, but there's a lot of similarities. We found people with a positive attitude to aging live 7 years longer. I mean, 7 years longer, and that people who laugh don't get ill as much. There's something like 75% decrease in or increase, in the ability for you to combat bacteria infections. It's like, what? Just because you laugh. So there's a lot of similarities, but there's some profound differences. Probably the best one was I saw an ad in an airport for, I think it was UBS banking or whatever, but it was of this 60-year-old grey-haired man who looked fabulous and looked in control of his life, and he was sailing his yacht across Lake Thun in Switzerland or wherever it was, and it said, 60 is the new 40. Do you have the right plan? And I literally said out loud, that's how they should be advertising to us. And when I went back to Jane and said, look at this ad, this is we've got to put this in the book. She said, 60 is the new 40. That is awful. All that says is that youth is important, that young is important, and women look at that and think I turned off completely. And I'm like, oh, okay, I think I'll change the name of the second chapter then. But it was a really good way of me realising this really does need to be written together. Otherwise, I'm just going to write a man in his 50s writes about not retiring tome.
And where can we get the book?
Well, Amazon.co.uk, favourite bookstores, if they haven't stocked it, they should. But Amazon's the best place. It's very quick. And
will you be writing another one?
Yes, there's a few on the horizon. We're trying to convince Jane to do a yoga book, and there's a really good leadership one that's in the back of my head. But I'll let you know, Susan. I'll let you know.
That's what we like to hear. Campbell, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for your time.
Pleasure. Lovely to meet you.
BBC Radio Stoke with me, Susan Hanks, and